Do you remember the first time you went to a wild place? I do. I was 8 years old. It was a swamp miles from anyone. The only sounds were birds, insects, and the thwap of my rubber boots as I pulled them from the muck.
Conserving nature and choosing the path of sustainable development is a compulsion, not a choice anymore.
We really must protect and promote the pulse of the planet.
Oxygen is much more valuable at this time than gold.
Why do mountains matter? They're a source of fresh water for half the world's population and also contain half of the planet's biodiversity hotspots. Our Hindu Kush Himalaya sustain nearly 2 billion people with water and food. What COP26, the UN Climate Summit, decides today is going to affect us all tomorrow.
But all is not yet lost. There are solutions. Sustainable Summits is here to share some of these. We are an informal network of mountain stakeholders with a mission to relieve pressure on mountain environments and to influence their preservation for future generations.
We send this powerful message from the Hindu Kush Himalaya, the pulse of the planet and the world's highest and most beleaguered mountain range, to reach critical decision makers gathered in Glasgow.
Our Sustainable Summit's global mountain community will highlight some proven solutions to combat the climate crisis that threatens to engulf us all.
Since 2010, our band of mountaineers, scientists, policymakers, conservationists, and indigenous leaders have shared their expertise with practical outcomes in flashpoints around the world. Colorado in the USA, Mount Cook in New Zealand, Mont Blanc in Chamonix, France. And now we speak to you from Nepal, in the shadow of Mount Everest, Sagarmatha.
Please listen. In your hands and in our immediate action to avert this catastrophe rests the future of the planet and indeed all humanity. Act now. There is still time to pull back from the brink.
In my lifetime, I have witnessed vast changes to the mountain environment and lives and livelihood of mountain people due to climate change. I know that the Himalayas are not alone in this. The mountain communities around the world share a similar plight.
For ages, Siberian cranes, native to northern Russia, have been traveling thousands of kilometers to spend their winters in Iran, Nepal, India, and China. For them, the world is one. Higher temperatures leading to increased drought, habitat destruction, and rising pollution has meant an obstruction in the migratory pattern for these birds, as has been the case for many other species. The climate crisis has led disruptions in the way the entire planet functions. These disruptions are spiraling into irreversible changes.
Regardless of the geography, we live in an interconnected world. What happens in one place in the world happens everywhere else. So what do we do as a world to address the issues at hand?
Ecological corridors that connect us are very important for sustaining lives and biodiversity. We also share air corridors that play an important role both in managing air quality and air pollution, especially with regard to black carbon that accelerates glacial melting. All these are very compelling reasons for collaboration to strengthen regional resilience.
Together we can build some research strategy. Together we can learn from each other how we can cope with the climate change related disasters and climate change adaptation interventions. And maybe we can collaboratively work to address such issues, and we can achieve the net zero emission by 2050 for our common future.
Our climate problems are shared, and natural resources like air and water know no national boundaries. So our solutions also have to be transboundary. Countries have to come together to cooperate on shared problems that can be only solved regionally.
The brick clean industry that is very important for countries like Nepal, Pakistan and India. Now here is where we can cooperate in the form of technology transfer into transforming adopting technologies that are less polluting. So this is already happening, and we are happy that we are already working on transforming the energy sector, in transforming the industries into less polluting ones. Now another example is in the area of disaster risk reduction. As you know, floods also know no national boundaries. So if you want to reduce loss of lives and property, then we need to cooperate in terms of exchanging information, in terms of exchanging knowledge and good practices.
Regional cooperation has an increasing role to play here too. Recent estimates show that regional power trade can reduce emissions by 9% by better matching of supply and demand. Secondly, securing the investments needed to make the HKH green, resilient and prosperous. We have doubled our commitment to international climate finance spending to £11.6 billion between 2021 and 25. But we know that we need to multiply this figure by working with partner governments and the private sector in the region.
Adding strength to strength, countries coming together to cooperate regionally will help us to create the global impact we need to truly tackle the climate crisis. Mountain ranges themselves cross national boundaries, and cooperating across those boundaries on biodiversity conservation, on air pollution mitigation, and on disaster risk reduction can be the starting point for broader cooperation on emissions reduction and other critical climate change impact areas.
Mountains are our living, working place and our playground. Mountains are our legacy, and it's our duty to take care of them for the next generation. It will only be possible thanks to ambitious cross-border programs and strong political commitments.
We believe the Sustainable Summit Conference is an opportunity to share best practices for our mountains, one of the last areas on the planet where human presence is merely transient.
The role of the Sustainable Summits Conference is incredibly important today, because we need to reach out to the people who make the decisions that protect our high mountains for humanity.
Promotion of international collaboration and exchange is also important. We once took a group of not only Asian or Himalayan scientists from China and Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, but also Andean engineers and glacial lake experts up to Imja Lake to exchange experiences in dealing with glacial lakes, which was a very productive exercise, not only because it promoted scientist to scientist exchange, but because local people came along.
Bringing sustainable mountain tourism in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region in times of climate and health crisis calls for innovation in view of the need for a new vision for tourism, fit for post-pandemic and changing climate world.
In the coming decades, the effort to really rebuild tourism has to take into considerations how they can also address some of the bigger global agendas such as addressing sustainable development goal, as well as taking into considerations how the building back better can really contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and also take a strong actions on climate change. So when we reflect the impacts created by the pandemic as well as climate crisis, it helps us to appreciate the fact that any effort to rebuild better tourism, business as usual is not going to be sufficient. So this is actually a stark reminder that any effort for us to build back better tourism has to be relooked from a perspective of how we can bring innovations.
Each country has its own good practices and good experiences. China is supporting mountain communities to develop this rural tourism as a way to shift from carbon-intensive economy to low-carbon economy. So this creates a lot of jobs and opportunities for mountain people, enables the mountain communities to reduce their dependence on extractive use of local resources and help the transformation of China's overall economy. I think the regional practices, not only from China, can be spread into other countries, but from Nepal, from Bhutan, from all the other member countries, can also be spread, disseminated into China and other countries.
Cooperation is critical. For example, better regional cooperation on water management in the Himalayas, the water tower of Asia that can help over 1 billion people cope better with floods and droughts, or increasing regional energy trade to help South Asia meet its energy demand without increasing emissions.
But there is no time to wait. We need to act with the urgency that this crisis demands.
Success will depend on international and regional partnerships that break down trade barriers, that promote cross-cutting innovation, and encourages truly inclusive development. Mountain communities are in a critical position to advance these solutions.
We all know what we must do, starting with correcting consumption habit, reducing plastic waste, adopting clean energy, and changing this lackluster attitude we have towards our planet. And if we all do this together, we can still save our planet.